Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Marion County Hardball. This one, of course, was recorded via a Zoom meeting, and I ask that you consider making a donation to Marion County Messenger to help us bring these interviews to you. You can go to our coffee and buy us a coffee. I will include the link in the address. And again, I also remind you that the benefits go to the Marion County Messenger and not to Rick Brandt. He is a volunteer interviewer. Allow me to introduce Michael Taylor, writer for the Nashville Scene.
I've lived for uh, 35 years now in Arkansas, and I'm originally from Florida. But from my earliest memories, I've been going to Marion County as a kid at least a couple times a year because a couple times a year my parents would pile the kids into the family car, and this was when we started doing it before there were interstates, drive the long winding road up to southern Illinois and southeast Missouri where all their relatives were. So we'd take a 2 or 3 day trip. And for a kid growing up on a beach in Florida, the most exciting part was the mountains of Tennessee. I'd never seen mountains like that before. And actually, in 2020, I had this book, Hidden Nature, which is kind of a memoir of my history of exploring caves in the South. And that began on those trips because I was reading at 5 years old. And when I could read, I'd see the signs, see Rock City, see Ruby Falls, see the Wonder Cave. And I was always begging my parents to pull over until one day they did. And I loved those caves. And so when I joined a college caving group many years later, we started coming up to Marion County to explore caves on a regular basis. And I've been doing it really my whole adult life ever since. And I just love the country. I like the people I met there. I know many of the cavers who live there. And I started writing articles. Really, my first article was about a Tinsley rock quarry in 2022 because there were a group of cavers along with some residents in Grundy County fighting that rock quarry. And the cavers knew that I sometimes wrote about environmental issues, and they called me up and said, "Well, you do an article on this rock quarry. The community doesn't want it, and it's kind of being shoved on them anyway." And I said, "Sure." And that rock quarry specifically threatened some local caves with sending pollution into them, including Wonder Cave, which used to be a tour cave when I was a kid. So in that way, I had written for a long time for the Nashville Scene, but that was the first thing I ever did on Marion County. And that sort of put me in touch with more residents in the area. And it was from those residents that I first started hearing things might be amiss in atop Mount Etna. And the more people I talked to, the more I thought, well, I think the scene would appreciate an article on this story, especially with all of the abandoned coal mines that were underneath River Gorge Ranch. And I talked to a state official and a federal official who agreed it wasn't just locals saying this. No, there were dozens, if not tens of dozens of abandoned coal mines, and that's what started me on it. And you pick out a scab, and sometimes more things come out, and that's what led to this series of articles that I've done off and on now since I guess 2023 was the first one, and the most recent was last year sometime. But
How
I'll
many you got
probably have
now?
another coming up soon.
How many articles have you done in total?
Gosh, let's see. I pulled some up so I could look at them and see. Uh, okay, one. This is just on development in Marion County. I've done one, two, three, four, five, six, seven altogether. Some of them very short, like just reporting whenever the lawsuit against Mr. Blevins and Mr. Kennedy was dismissed. That was only a quick online piece. Some of them have been more detailed stories that ran both in print and online. And so there's a little bit, of range on that. But and I, do- you know, I don't think there's one of those I set out saying I'm going to go do something about Marion County. It's rather people contacted me with information. I check the information, I find it's accurate, and I think yes, this is worthy of an article.
So the one that we're going to discuss tonight is the Team Thunder, I think it was, the good old boys and gals
Yeah,
of Marion County.
the good old boys and girls. That was May of last year.
Right. Do you want to, what inspired you to write that, and what actually got you, uh,
Well,
were
I
you
had
putting,
actually it was what to me, uh, whether or not it is illegal, it just seemed improper. Some of the things the Planning Commission were doing, and actually a year before that, I had this article that was called "Gorging on Mount Etna." And May 2nd, 2024. So they were May 2024 and May 2025. And that one was subtitled How an East Tennessee Developer Sidestepped Regulations to Open River Gorge Ranch. And in that, I cited specific times where the Planning Commission had violated its own rules, which it turns out they're not required by law to enforce their own rules, but had clearly violated its own rules in plats that were presented for River Gorge Ranch. And this was fairly complicated stuff. So I ran it past a couple of different experts before I published it. I always want to be accurate in what I publish. And they said, yes, it's accurate. And yes, they were very clearly rushing some phases of this development through without doing what was required by their own regulations. And then a year later, there seemed to be even more of that. And that's what led to this article, The Good Old Boys and Gals of Marion County Government.
and you know that they, meaning the chairman, the existing chairman of the Marion County Commission, has called your material the National Enquirer nonsense. And I think just in
Well, I
the
don't have a single bat boy from the cave or any aliens, uh, any at all. That might
and
be
then the
more
last
fun.
one, he actually he got quite feisty in the meeting, and he was like, "Well, you have no proof, or where is your proof?" And I know that there is a substantial amount of evidence
Mhm.
that you used in order to write your article.
Right, right. And if anyone wants to see, some of these allegations of rules not being followed, the paperwork itself verifies that. I don't need a person to verify it, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who requests it of me. Sometime, and some of the articles had links actually to specific minutes from planning commission meetings and things like that. But of course, your average reader doesn't want to wade through that stuff. In terms of people, while I quote anyone who will let me quote them in the article who has specific knowledge, there are a lot of people I've talked to in this series of articles I've done, but especially in this one you're referencing tonight, that are afraid they'd lose their jobs if I quoted them directly. And they said, I'll tell you what I know and you can check it out, but please don't use my name in your article because I have to make a living here. And
Yeah.
I understand that. And I would not, I never went with anything from one anonymous source, but sometimes I'd have three or four anonymous sources, all in a position to know, all saying the same thing. And in that case, I'd run with it.
Gotcha, gotcha. You want to kind of go over what you encountered, and just from the makeup of the planning commission itself. Were you
Well,
kind of surprised about the relationships and how long or how far back those
well,
relationships?
yes and no. I mean, I have lived in the rural South and I understand the rural South. And it is pretty common that if a bunch of people grew up together and then they all become business people of one sort or another, and they might gravitate toward local government, especially if they get extra salaries from doing it, that they'll look out for one another. And if they were in the same clique in high school, they're likely to be in the same clique in their adult lives. But at the same time, even though that's something you encounter throughout the South and especially the rural South, I've never seen it to a degree such as you see in Marion County. And that particular article, I mean, it's a minor little thing, but the thing I opened with, I thought just encapsulated all because it was a photo from it was actually a reunion basketball team of stars of the 70s. And on that basketball team, standing in their basketball jerseys, in 1989, which was, about 10 years after they graduated, was David Jackson, Billy Gouger, and Robert Kelly, all right there smiling with one another. And they definitely play on the same team. They played on the same team then, and they're playing on the same team now.
Mhm.
And so that gives you a commission that is really not a place where citizens come in and can ask questions and get good answers. It's a place where things get rubber stamped.
Well, knowing that some people may not have read your article, can you kind of let us know what some of the occupations of those old buddies were?
Well, let's see. I've got the article in front of me. If you don't mind, I'll just read a little bit from the
Okay,
article
that'd be great.
here. Uh, uh, As reported by the Scene around this time last year, all three, referring to those three who played ball, sit on the Marion County Planning Commission, which Jackson chairs. There, they continue to work as a team, especially when it comes to approving all aspects of River Gorge Ranch. Skipping ahead a little, Gouger's day job is running the Reliance Title Agency, which sits on the courthouse square. According to the online praise of a local realtor, and when these articles, even though they run in a print magazine, when they run online, I often have little links to supporting information, and you click on that link and you get a lovely quote from an online realtor. Gouger is great at closing real estate transactions. Some of those transactions involve RGR properties, as do some mortgages initiated by Kelly. Among the 9 commission members, and this was a year ago, so it's changed a little bit, are Louise Powell, owner of Hart Realty, and Gene Hargis, a county commissioner and chief detective of the Marion County Sheriff's Department, who has done occasional security work at RGR, as he publicly acknowledged at a recent commission meeting. So, there's they're like this basically.
Yeah.
And again, from everything I could find, they stop shy of breaking, at least in terms of what was in that article, breaking any laws, but they certainly swing the laws to support what they want to do. One person I interviewed, who I believe you've also talked to a few times. In fact, I know you have because I've quoted you on it. But Charlie Curtis, the executive director of the Tennessee County Commissioners Association, he said mayors or county electives should be non-voting members of any board or commission that they appoint. And he said, I don't see how you could be a voting member of the Planning Commission. But he added he's not a lawyer. But it turns out they've been doing this in Marion County for many years, and nobody stopped them, and that's sort of the justification to keep doing it. That he
Yeah.
becomes the head of the planning commissioner while a voting member of the county commission.
Well, I know we have found some as far as regional planning commissions, Title 13 does state that the mayor can't be. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, and I found that too, but later Charlie Curtis said it's unlikely that there's going to be any kind of enforcement of that, and here it
well,
is
yeah,
a year later.
you have to have standing in order to
Yeah,
do anything about it. And I guess as commissioners, we don't have really standing. It has to be somebody from one of the developments that's being affected by it or being harmed
right,
for them to do
right.
anything. But you were talking about that there's really nothing that you saw that was criminal, let's say, um, mostly improper.
Yes, a
Let's
lot
talk,
of improper, but yes,
yeah,
mostly improper.
but let's talk about the private roads and the road superintendent. Um, what did you learn about what was going on there?
Well, and let's see, I can't remember. Uh, I this was a year ago. I need to look at the article here.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, okay, the state count this. Okay, I spoke with let's see, Brett
You want to read
Howe,
it
the
again? Go
executive
ahead.
director of the Highway Association,
Oh,
and this
okay.
is about Corey Pickett, who was the current road superintendent. Uh, he asked an engineer to perform inspections, and the engineer referred him to uh, Brett Howe, executive director. And Howe told Pickett the only way he could sign off on those roads would be if the developer hired a licensed engineer to inspect them first. That's part of the state's county uniform highway law. And this is quoting Howe. He says it forbids us to do any work or instruct an employee to do any work on a road that is not public. And Howe says, I've seen the billboards on the highway that advertise this development as a gated community. That phrase means the roads are private. Therefore, as far as the man in charge of county highways in the state knows, it is not legal to force the superintendent to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what did you have any interviews to get any indications of what happened?
Well, as I say here, and again, this is a lot of people saying, please don't quote me, but yes.
Oh, right, right.
According to multiple sources, the mayor and other officials pressured Pickett to continue as all his predecessors had. When he refused, they changed the subdivision regulations. And RGR's engineer is now going to provide the required data. That was at the time I published it. I don't know if that ever happened or not. And Jackson said the roads have to meet the highway standards of our subdivision regulations. But
yeah, whether
I think whether they do or not is kind of an open question.
Sure. I guess as it relates to, because I know you did mention something about Thomas Morgan. Do you want to comment on?
Well, I spoke with him recently because I read where he had accepted a settlement of $85,000 for the suit, alleging that his free speech rights had been violated when he was thrown out of the commission meeting, which I did have a paragraph talking about that. And he's really kind of unhappy with the settlement. He said he took it, but he would much rather have seen some of those individuals on the commission who denied his rights having to fork up the money than the county itself. Mm-hmm. But I happened to be at that meeting working on one of these stories when he was removed, and clearly they just didn't want him talking, and the person running the meeting was of the opinion that he shouldn't be allowed to say this. So if he kept it up, she was going to throw him out, and that's exactly what she did.
Well, and too, what's kind of interesting is there was ethics committee I should say a request for investigations into a number of unethical, or what we thought were unethical. One of them happened to be this article of yours, and it, of course, the attorney that they hired basically stated that there's no there. And Morgan's, I believe, his got thrown out as well, but I don't think that they didn't say anything about there being a $85,000 settlement to make the thing go away. But
no, they didn't mention that.
They didn't mention that.
One of those things that they neglected to say anything about.
Well, and as I understand it, and now I've not written about this, but I've seen in a number of places that there is another large bill coming to the county that is a result of the Planning Commission rushing something through involving one of the roads that was not done according to law, and the number that sticks in my head was about $200,000 to fix it.
216,000 and some change. Yes, I think that change order has been presented, and we're getting ready to talk about it. You did mention something about change versus tradition. You being someone that's not from Marion County,
right?
Would you kind of highlight where you were going with that?
Well, like I say, I've spent a lot of time just as someone who loves American caves. Some of those best caves are in Tennessee and northern Alabama and North Georgia. And luckily, although I was not from that area, my parents were both raised on farms in southern Illinois and southeast Missouri, which is enough like those areas. I knew how to get along with farmers and get permission to go on their land and go caving and things. And so I've encountered it in Tennessee a lot. And a good friend of mine in Tennessee, who was also from Florida, she and her husband lived there for about 20 years. Now they moved back to Florida. But she was a school teacher. And as I say in the article here, at every interview she went to in Tennessee to try to get a job teaching school, there were never any questions about her experience, her degree, her teaching style. The first question was always, who are your people?
Mm-hmm.
And if the person interviewing didn't know her people, she was not going to get a job teaching at that school. And you know, that's what leads to this kind of insular you know, communities, which if you're insular in that way with your own business, that's your own business and nobody else's. But if you've got a public trust, and especially if you're encouraging people from other places to move into your county, bring manufacturing, bring jobs, improve tourism, make it part of the rest of the world, then that sort of an attitude is going to cause problems sooner or later. And you know, that's exactly what I think has happened in Marion
Joey,
County.
I think I've been stomping on Joey here. Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, I want to hear Joey's opinion on all this.
Well, I was just really interested in listening to what y'all were saying there. Maybe I'll come up with something in a minute. I was enthralled with what you're talking about.
Well,
Well, Joey, here's something I want to ask you now. My background is not just as a journalist, but I taught college journalism classes for over 30 years. And as a teacher, I sometimes had to teach courses in public relations, even though that's really not my field. But I had to study up enough that students could work on it. And one of the things we'd spend at least 3 or 4 weeks on every semester I had to teach it was, you know, damage control when you had some kind of bad publicity that comes up. And the examples of companies that did it well are companies that are very quick to get out in front of whatever the bad information is, said, yes, this happened. Here's the steps we're taking to rectify it. We're sorry if anyone was hurt by this. We're going to make things right. You know, a few years ago, Yarnell's ice cream had to shut down for a year, and I love Yarnell's ice cream, probably good for me, but because there was listeria in their ice cream. But they immediately shut down. They immediately acknowledged, yes, this is a fact. We're very sorry. We owe an apology to our customers. And whenever that story came out about the coal mines, if River Gorge Ranch had done that sort of thing, said, yes, yes, we're going to do some more testing to see where the mines are in relation to the lots we're selling. We're going to get more experts in here to make sure that they're safe, and we're going to take whatever steps we need to make sure they're safe. I wouldn't have had a story to write. But instead, I'm sitting at the meeting waiting to see how they react. And here comes a lawyer serving Mr. Blevins right here and Mr. Kennedy. And I want to know what you thought of in that moment.
Well, the thing is, how I even got. I've been going up there since I was just a little boy. Started going up on it, and then when I was 11, they used to have a public access there, bow water and everything, had a park, and actually started up there riding 20-inch bicycles, and then went on to motorcycles and different things over the years. And I was a commissioner, and at the time, county commissioner, and Mr. Kennedy called me up. He was quite active in asking questions and giving comments about different things. He's active in the community. And he called me and said, hey, if I build a house up there and the floor falls out of it, will my insurance cover it? I mean, I'm a county commissioner. I'm not an insurance guy. I mean, I said, well, be honest with you, that's kind of out of my range. You know, I don't know. So what are you talking about? And so he used to be, he told me he was over the mineral rights up there, kind of looked after them for the owners. And he said, well, there's, you know, and I knew that there, I saw mines and stuff like that, and big pits and all this, and big hills, and like the trash ground, that, you know, this big loose stuff, and the creeks and everything, and the water in it. And I just thought, then he kept coming to me and telling me, bringing me maps and stuff. At first, I didn't realize the serious, you know, the possible seriousness of it. And he kept on, showing me these maps, and I was thinking, wow, you got a lot of people moving here and stuff that's buying this land. They don't know anything about it. And I thought at least they need to know what the land used to be. And then when your articles started coming out, which I'd never talked to you or anything, they came out, from other sources. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, I need to share this with some of these folks. And then because I kind of if I was to buy a car that'd been underwater or whatever, I'd like for the owner to tell me that it had been in flood. Mm-hmm. I don't want to find out down the road. That's just my personal opinion. So I thought, well, I need to share this. And then when I did, that's when I got sued. And I was just telling the truth, as far as I knew it, and the maps and everything else. So it wasn't, if, like you said there, Mr. Taylor, if they'd told the folks up front, this used to be an old mining territory. They had schools and everything up there. That's how they a company store with company money.
It's one of the most historic mining areas in America.
Yeah. Yes, and it was and the mines on Etna was the oldest mines in Marion County. Mm-hmm. So, I regret that all that. I hate that happened. It was something that shouldn't have been done, and I just appreciate you putting the articles out to kind of fill in the blanks for folks, and I feel like at least it's out there now, and if people wants to, if they, and this is the whole thing with me, the information's there. If they want to see it, if they want to research some properties, fix and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on them, build whatever kind of house, the information's there. And then if they choose to go forward with it, whatever they decide to do, I feel like, the information's there now.
Well, as I actually wrote in one of those articles, I think suing you and Mr. Kennedy was their PR plan. We'll just blame it on these guys. We can't blame it on the guy who published it, because he's got multiple lines of evidence, including from various state and federal officials, that it's absolutely true. There were all these coal mines down there. I did not get sued along with you. And if I had, I'm sure the scene would have had a lot of fun defending me, and I'd have had a lot of fun defending me, because as a teacher, one of the first things I have to teach students who want to be journalists, which there's fewer and fewer of those anymore, and I'm retired from it now, and fewer teachers of it, but is you don't want to get sued for libel. And that means you want to check your facts. And you also want to understand what is libel. What can you sue somebody for, and what can you not? And I just laughed like crazy the day I read that complaint, because one of the things you were sued for libel was posting on Facebook after an article about RGR the word "ga." "Ga" is not a libelous term. If I were to call you a criminal, that could be libelous. But if I were to read something you wrote and say "ga" about it, that's just my opinion. And yet here you were being sued for something that would never hold up in court, and it did not hold up in court. It was clearly just a ploy to find a scapegoat so they could keep selling lots, because that all happened to come out right when they were having a big sales event, and lots of out-of-state people coming like 2 weekends later.
And real quick on Joey, if you could let the audience know the outcome of being sued by this developer. What was the end result?
Well, the end result was that the people that sued us had to pay our attorney fees, and it was dismissed and not to be revisited. And plus, I'd say they had to pay their own attorney fees. So ours ended up, between Ronnie's and mine, is over around $220,000. And then I don't know what their own attorneys charged them.
I'm sure they were steep.
So that's basically what happened there. And look, what people does with their property, that's on them. But these people moving here I live at the base of Etna Mountain, and they're going to be my neighbors. and the developer and folks are going to be gone eventually. These people are still going to be here, and I'm sure I'm going to get to know some of them one way or another. And I just felt like it's my civic duty to let them know that the place has been mine since starting before the Civil War.
Right.
And that was the only proper thing to do, because I'd want to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and as time went on, what I found out, what I'm still finding out as recently as last week, somebody sent me something from uh, to do with Mount Etna, is that uh, in a lot of other ways, these people are moving. And, you know, so far there's been no damage that I'm aware of anywhere caused by the old mines that are under the property. It could happen sometime, but there has not been. I don't know of any pollution damage that's been caused by the old mines. I know that happens almost anywhere people build on top of mines, but I don't know that it's happened here. But what people keep telling me about is just how they buy a lot and then they're lied to about when they're going to get water, when they're going to get electricity. And while there is city water now at the new restaurant and at part of the development, there's other people who are trying to sell their lots because they had thought that by this time they would have a finished house with electricity and some type of septic system and city water. And they don't have any of those things because of all of the various delays. And then there's the question about how safe are the roads and how much can you trust the roads because of the way the roads were not properly inspected the first time around.
What's your, and we won't keep it too much longer, but what's your thought on the Supreme Court decision as it relates to the Special Powers Act and with Mr. Tinsley?
Well, as I said when we began talking this evening, the way I started writing Nashville Scene articles on this part of Tennessee was with an article on the fight in Grundy County to shut down that particular quarry. And the county adopted the Special Powers Act, commonly called the County Powers Act, so they could declare the thing a nuisance. And I spoke to many residents who demonstrated very clearly how it was indeed a nuisance. But Tinsley kept fighting it so I was able to report in a little follow-up to that article that that quarry had been shut down after it was published in 2022. But Tinsley kept fighting it all the way to the state Supreme Court, who just came back and said and basically destroyed that law by saying it was designed for rural counties that have no zoning ordinances. But they said the act of saying something's a nuisance because of its location near a public school, that's a zoning ordinance, and therefore you can't use the Special Powers Act. And this is going to have the effect of really undercutting many counties in Tennessee, not just Grundy County. And I know you tried to pass it in Marion County, and it did not get past the power structure that exists there. But I don't think this fight's over yet. And in fact, I heard that just last week there were 3 different bills seeking to amend the Special Powers Act so that it would not be thought of as a zoning ordinance that were in the Tennessee legislature. And there was a committee meeting to decide how they could get this all hammered into one bill that a number of legislators could support. I haven't heard what happened on that yet, but I do plan to follow up on that, and that'll probably be my next article in the Nashville Scene.
Well, outstanding.
Good. Brings me to a question. How do we get a copy of all of your works?
Well, you can find all of them online at NashvilleScene.com. If you want a physical paper copy, I'd say you'd have to call or write or stop by their Nashville office and see if they have back issues. There are some of them I don't have paper copies of. The bigger ones, they'll send me 1 or 2 copies in the mail. But since I live out of state, unless I happen to be in Nashville when it comes out, and then I'll grab a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I don't have copies myself, but you can find any of them by going to NashvilleScene.com and, just type RGR and that'll pull them up, or my name.
Okay. Excellent.
Well, thank you. Do you have any, Joe, you have anything?
No, I kind of said what I had to say, I guess.
Okay.
And now, can I give a quick little plug here, which is what I really love writing about is the cave exploring I've been doing all these years. So if anyone's interested in my cave books and or articles, check out my website, which is my name all is one word, michaelraytaylor.com.
Okay.
Oh, great. And if anyone had any questions about any of your
Oh,
articles,
yeah. There's an email link on the website. So anybody who has any questions, email me on that link and I will answer them quickly as I can. Now I'm getting ready to go on a trip for about a week, so I won't be checking email every day, but I will get back to you.
okay.
Excellent.
Mr. Taylor, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Y'all
Okay.
take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye.